Hello, I'm Adam Cook. I'm the host of Telile 24/7. Today I'm here in Potlotek First Nation. This is a community tucked just inside the northeastern border between Richmond County and the Cape Breton Regional Municipality. This is a community of great history, culture, language, pride, a diligent work ethic, and great resilience from its people. But this is also a community that over the past month has been mired in a local chapter of the dispute between the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, non-Indigenous fishers, and those who feel that they have a treaty right for a moderate livelihood fishery as set out in 1752. We're going to try to answer questions surrounding the dispute between Potlotek First Nation and the Department of Fisheries and Oceans and see what solutions can be brought forward to try to solve the issues that have arisen throughout the month of October since Potlotek launched its moderate livelihood fishery in St. Peter's Bay just a few weeks ago. I'm Adam Cook. This is a special edition of Telile 24/7. Throughout this dispute between the Potlotek First Nation fishers and the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, it has been Potlotek's chief, Wilbert Marshall, that has been front and center in the negotiations and in the public relations for this fishery. It was Chief Marshall that first announced that there would be a moderate livelihood fishery by Mi'kmaq fishers back in the summer. And once things got going in October, it was he who was front and center in making sure that the fishery was carried out safely. And with DFO removing traps from the waters, it has been Wilbert Marshall who has been front and center in the negotiations with DFO officials in Ottawa, negotiations that have not always gone smoothly. To try to cast some light on why these difficulties have arisen and what can be done next, I spoke to Potlotek Chief Wilbert Marshall. Here's that interview right now. And we're very pleased to be joined by the Chief of Potlotek First Nation, Wilbert Marshall. He joins us by Zoom today. Chief Wilbert, thank you for making some time for us for Telile 24/7 today.
No problem, madam.
All right. So we appreciate you coming on board. So I wanted to begin this interview by going back a little bit and talking about the timing of the launch of the moderate livelihood fishery. Can you give us a sense of just how this all began? What led Potlotek to be involved, and what led Potlotek to want to launch one of their own?
Well, our guy's been fishing for a while. We started back. We've been at this for a few years now, way back to even longer than Marshall. And it just so happens Donald Marshall won the court case, and especially last year when we were going back last year to harass one of our fishermen, Craig Doucette. And I came up to him and said, let's try and come up with our own plan. So that's what DFO was telling me. You got to come up with a plan, and that's what we did we worked on it we must have worked on it for about 6 months or so. Went to the community, talked to the fishermen, went on Zoom, and we had a community meeting at the end, even with all this COVID stuff going on. We met with the community, and we proceeded, and exactly what they told us to do. But anyway, things conspired, and DFO still kept harassing us, but now just recent, yesterday, we got an email from them. They want to talk, and the minister's telling me you got to talk to CNP, and we've been doing exactly what they're telling us. We're gonna having a hard time with the local guys here, the local DFO. But anyway, let's see how it goes now, and they want to meet, and we want to start open dialogue. We're being fully transparent with our fishermen, what they're catching and all that stuff, and
Well, we'll certainly hope for the best there. I want to track it back to early October because that's when the moderate livelihood fishery for Potlotek began in St. Peter's Bay. It seemed that going up into the run-up to this, that you guys were getting cooperation from the other players in the local lobster fishery, including members of the Richmond County Inshore Fishermen's Association. Can you describe that atmosphere and what it was like as the fishermen were starting to head out from Potlotek in early October?
Well, it wasn't that many of us really. There isn't that many people fishing if you look at it, really look at the big picture, there's only a small percentage of my community that's fishing. Like I got a on reserve is about maybe 650, 680 on off total. My total population is 780 on and off reserve, but there's only a small fraction that's fishing. And I started getting people from Escazoni fishing also, because Escazoni and Potlotek, a lot of people from Escazoni, originally from Potlotek. It used to be the biggest community one time, and we picked St. Peter's area, the canal there, because our main villages way back in the day, that's where we lived, either side of the canal. It only made sense to us. We launched out of St. Peter's, but we like to launch everywhere. We like to, you know, work with the association and all that, but they gotta understand also our rights. But I think hopefully through education for the schools and all that, will educate the people from the kids and on up. And hopefully the kids will educate their parents. But anyway, that's how I see it. But October 1st, our guys picked October 1st. Chief and council did. We let the community decide and the fishermen decide. They want October 1st because it's Treaty Day. We could have finished way back. We were done with our plan before that. We could have finished a few weeks before, but we didn't. Yeah. They picked October 1st.
Historical and cultural significance of Treaty Day, of course.
Treaty Day, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, September 17th when the decision came up, or 18th. I forget, 17th or 18th, when the decision came up back then.
This, of course, is a difficult time for the Indigenous fishery around Nova Scotia, and I'm just wondering, with all that was going on with the moderate livelihood fishery, with the Sebenactity over in southwestern Nova Scotia, with the protests and with the violence that had been happening there, was there trepidation on your part or on the part of the fishermen that were going out when October 1st came around and it was the official start of the day? Was that in the back of your minds?
Oh yeah, that was all in the back of our heads. But I started talking to the association a few days prior, and I said we don't want, because a lot of our people living outside the community also. We know each other, and some non-natives live in my community also that are related to the fishermen also. We didn't want that. Like we can see, everybody's seen on the news all over the world now what happened there. We didn't want the same thing. So far it's been going good.
So let's track to the day when we started seeing evidence that Department of Fisheries and Oceans officers were removing traps from the waters, were coming to the Mi'kmaq fishermen coming out of Potlotek and saying, no, you can't do this. Can you describe what you felt that day and what was being reported to you that day? What was all that like for you and for the people who had committed to carrying out a moderate livelihood fishery?
We thought we were okay because we were dealing with the minister, and we didn't understand how the legalities, how this worked. It's like CNP is a total different department compared to the minister, but they should have told us right from the start. But nobody told us that. But anyway, as we're going now, we're talking to them now, and hopefully they'll leave us alone and let us fish, and we could just ongoing talks for now. And later on, we could settle this. Because we're not going to stop fishing. Our guys are going to keep fishing, but there isn't that many people fishing. But I guess, as we're going, we're going to find out more information.
Now, I'm just wondering how many are fishing. I was at the canal yesterday. Actually, I did see 4 boats that were flying the Mi'kmaq flags, and they were by the lobster setup on the other side. About how many people are directly involved in the Potlotek moderate livelihood fishery?
I could only speak for Potlotek. I know there's about 4 full-size lobster boats we have, and they're not even old. They're old boats, but everybody got to start off somewhere. And we have 2 smaller ones also for my community. And there's maybe 5 people on the boat, but you get a maximum of 200 traps per boat, 70 per person. But nobody's fishing. I know a few people aren't fishing 70 traps either. Maybe 35, 10, and I know I signed the papers for each fisherman.
You've mentioned a couple of times now that the talks have picked up between Potlotek First Nation and DFO, and I know that was something that was a concern for you for quite a while, that they just didn't seem willing to speak to you, but it looks like that has picked up. Like you say, there are going to be more discussions happening. What's your feeling about the atmosphere at these discussions? Do you feel that you folks are going to be able to find some common ground? Are the two sides farther apart than you'd hoped, or do you think there's a chance of being able to reach some kind of deal to be able to allow the fishery to be able to persist in St. Peter's Bay?
My hope is we will. And I always optimistic of seeing ongoing talks and let our people fish also. But we've been fully transparent right from the start. Everything we sent them our plan and all that right from the start. It was kind of disappointing when I heard not that long ago. They didn't even look at our plan until we had a meeting there a few weeks ago, and they had it since before October 1st. They had it. It was sitting on somebody's desk. And when the guys got pulled over, the DFO officers told them themselves they don't recognize the livelihood. They don't. It's not an authorized fisheries. They don't recognize the livelihood fisheries. This is what the officers were telling our guys. It was kind of a shock to us. But but from what the minister was telling us anyway, go back and talk to CNP, and that's what we've been trying. And I know they've been trying, but I don't know how this works. But she's the lead. She's the minister. She should know what's going on, but she had no idea what was going on. None.
Bernadette Jordan is the Minister of Fisheries, and she is a Nova Scotia MP as well. Her riding borders right on some of the ridings that were experiencing such violent protests in terms of non-native fishermen, in terms of the Sebenacadie fishery. What's your assessment of how she's handling all this? You sound a bit disappointed with the minister's role and how this is all unfolding.
They should have stepped in long ago, especially what's going on in Sebenacadie, especially picking a mediator. They're better off picking a mediator from somewhere on the prairies, somebody we don't know both sides. Because right now, there's still going to be a distrust. It's not going to work. I heard this guy here, he's best friends with the association guys and some of the guys from CNP. He plays hockey with them every weekend. So that doesn't paint a good picture. So that's what I've been hearing from other people is they have to get somebody else altogether from somewhere else, I would say. Because somebody from the prairies, they have to. If they want a total reconciliation with our people and trust, that's where it's going to start. They got to get somebody totally not from here. It doesn't take long to learn all that stuff. The learning curve. People could read. They could see what's on the internet, and they could pick whatever they want to say, what they want to see. But the only way they're going to do it is meet with the people and ask both sides what's going on. But if you're gonna pick somebody from that community and not let the other side, Mi'kmaq, have somebody there on the table also, it's not going to work.
What happens now? You'd mentioned there is continuing discussion between Potlotek officials and with DFO. Are there more meetings planned, and when are they planned to happen?
Hopefully sooner the better. I won't know till we contact DFO.
Last question to you, Chief Marshal. What do you feel is the mood right in Potlotek First Nation because of all of this? From where you're sitting, what do you feel the average person on the street in Potlotek is saying about all of this?
My community, we're fishing. They're quite proud. They want to go fishing. It's there's a lot of people a lot of poverty, right? And they want to build their own houses and put food on the table. But by doing that, I know they're quite proud, and I've seen a few people fishing, and they're actually sharing their catches, and they're sharing the boat also. You don't see that anywhere else, and they're all splitting it evenly. Nobody makes more than the other guy. They might put so much money on the boat. That's about it. But I actually seen it happen with my own two eyes, and that's the way it should be done.
All right. We've covered a lot of ground in a short time. Chief Marshal, I appreciate you giving me some time here today. Did you want to add anything else about all of this just before we wrap up?
I just hope everybody's safe and we practice conservation. We follow our plan to a T, and we're fully transparent also. Of course, we're learning as we're going, and we'll get there eventually.
Well, we know this is not an easy time, and we know that you're juggling quite a lot in the middle of all of this. We appreciate you giving us some time here on Telile 24/7. Wolanan, Chief Marshal, thank you for joining us today.
Well, all y'all. Thanks.
Wilbert Marshall is the chief of Potlotek First Nation. We've been speaking to him by Zoom. Stay tuned for more of Telile 24/7 in just a moment. It has been just over a month since the Potlotek moderate livelihood fishery got underway, and it has just been a few weeks since DFO officials removed Potlotek traps from the waters, sparking a protest at the Lennox Passage office of the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. How has all of this affected life in Potlotek and for those who are trying to promote the community from a business perspective? For the answers to these and other questions, I spoke to the CEO of Potlotek First Nation. Her name is Crystal Nicholas. Here's that conversation now. So, can you take me back to the first days when it became clear that DFO was taking action against lobster fishers from Potlotek? What was your immediate reaction, and what action did your office take in conjunction with the chief and the band council? What were the steps that came?
Well, it was very disheartening to find out that DFO was actually out on the water, considering how transparent Potlotek First Nation has been with its new fishery. So hearing rumors of DFO being out hauling traps, nobody truly believed it at first until they had gone out the next day to find out that they're missing quite a few traps, which of course really upsets the community. Given that we had really put a lot of effort into this plan to manage this very new fishery.
I was wondering about that because it does seem like there was cooperation with the Richmond County Inshore Fishermen's Association as well as with DFO to be able to make all this work. So with all of that going on, was there disappointment and surprise in your office and around the community when things happened as the way they did?
Very much so. Knowing what had happened down on the South Shore, that was the very last thing that we wanted to happen within our community. We pride ourselves on maintaining a good relationship with our neighboring communities. So trying to be 100% transparent, notifying DFO, the whole plan and what boats we had, what fishermen, how many tags, what they look like, where we were going to be, and having the chief speak with the president of the association at that time, trying to educate and just have them understand that this is why we are doing what we are doing. It was pretty disheartening to see the reaction from DFO at that time.
Mm-hmm. So how would you describe negotiations that have taken place from that point with both DFO and with the Minister of Fisheries, Bernadette Jordan? What progress, if any, do you feel has been made? I mean, I spoke to Chief Marshall a little earlier this week, and he seems both concerned, but at least pleased that the talks are still going on. What's your sense from your office as to how things have gone?
I feel the same way. I know talks on any level of government do take a lot of time, as they do include quite a few people. So it is slow moving, but at least it is, progressing slowly forward.
I'm curious as to how you feel this has impacted life in general in Potlotek First Nation. I mean, what are you feeling and what are people saying to you just on a day-to-day basis? What's the sense of how this has all impacted everyday living here, especially, as you say, given in terms of what's gone on the South Shore as well?
The safety of our community members has been number one since day one, and just keeping everybody cool and calm and level-headed throughout the whole process. It's been pretty good. The community is very 100% behind moderate livelihood, and we rally around our fishermen.
I'm curious as to how you feel that Potlotek is looked at from outside the community boundaries as you're attempting to create various business partnerships and community partnerships inside and outside of Potlotek. Does something like this impact your office, and does it make your job harder, or do people seem to be sympathetic to what's happening in Potlotek with the fishers over there? What do you feel has been the general reaction both inside and outside?
I'm very sympathetic to the cause, actually. The call out from a lot of people in support is very heartwarming. We do try on many different angles, recreation, economic development, to try and work with the neighboring communities and keep those relationships going. So it's very heartwarming to see the support that's been coming in.
Are you optimistic about the future of the talks? What's your general sense of where we go from here?
It's just a day-to-day. I'm very optimistic, but I think any movement forward is great movement. Okay. So we'll take it.
Well, we greatly appreciate your perspective, and we want to thank you for joining us on Telile 24/7 today and making some time for us. Thank you so much.
No problem.
All right. Crystal Nicholas is the CEO of Potlotek First Nation. She spoke to us by phone this morning from her office in Potlotek. Stay tuned for more of Telile 24/7 in just a moment. So at a certain point, the question becomes, what is the federal government and the Department of Fisheries and Oceans doing at this time to address the issues that have arisen in the Indigenous fishery locally and around the province, and to make some movement on the Marshall decision that took place in 1999 regarding the right for Indigenous fishers to have a moderate livelihood fishery? To try to shed some light on some of these issues, I spoke to Cape Breton-Canso Member of Parliament Mike Kelloway. He is one of several MPs that took part in an emergency debate in the House of Commons earlier in October to try to deal with the fishery issues that have been taking place among Canada's Indigenous communities. I spoke to Mr. Kelloway via Zoom. Here are his thoughts on the issue and what can happen going forward.
Have you had conversation with officials with Potlotek? Can you give me a sense on just what you feel about all of this and where we can go from here on it?
For sure, and thanks again for having me, Adam. And I'll just go back a bit in time in kind of establish kind of the context of myself working with the many fishing associations and the First Nations communities over the past year, and in particular since March, because of COVID. I accelerated a lot of different discussions with the fishing associations and First Nations communities on a whole host of things. In particular, the fisheries announcements that were made in relation to COVID, the fishing harvester grant, and subsequently many others that came from it. That was around the $500 million announcement. Largely, that had to do with the complete immersion on my part and my staff's part of getting to know as much as we could very quickly of the fishery file from a whole host of facets. So we worked very closely with First Nations communities, the three in our riding, and the fishing associations from Canso to Glace Bay to Arishat to Shetty Camp, in putting together real solid ideas and plans on measures that would help fishers and the fishing sector, not just in our riding, but Atlantic Canada. And lo and behold, the work we did together was largely adopted by the minister and then cabinet. And it really is something that is a Cape Breton-Canso solution that emanated from fishers, both Indigenous and non-Indigenous, to Ottawa, that now is a $500 million investment in the fishery in Atlantic Canada and to in a certain degree on the West Coast. Now, why do I bring that up? I bring that up because for me, before politics and now during politics, everything is about relationships and about knowing your files. And so that immersion has provided me, by no means am I an expert, not even close on the fishery, but I've learned a lot over the past 10 months. And so I think that positioned myself and my office well to continue those discussions with the fishing associations, for example, in Richmond County, who have a strong leadership there, and Gord McDonald and Carla Sampson and others, and also with Chief Wilbert Marshall. So over the past number of weeks, past couple of months really, I know I've met with Wilbert. I meet with the fishing associations quite a lot to kind of get a sense of where do we go from here, identifying the challenges on both sides and bringing that to the minister. So, for example, I took part in the fishing debate, emergency debate 2 Mondays ago. And what I was trying to do there, Adam, is a couple of things. Number one, the Supreme Court in 1999 rendered their decision on moderate livelihood in terms of it being identified, and then it was also reaffirmed later on. And a lot of work has been done under the Marshall decision, not under moderate livelihood, but in other aspects of ensuring that Marshall communities have investment in the fishery, whether it be with fishing boats or fishing apparel, PPE, and so forth and so on. So a lot has been done since 1999, and a lot has not been done. And a lot of that has to do with the federal government. A lot of that has to do with working in collaboration, nation to nation, with KMK. And a lot of times when you have negotiations, there's ups and there's downs, and there's been ups and downs over the 21 years. But what I've done is reach out to the Prime Minister. I've written a very detailed letter on the situation, and I've also debated it, as I mentioned, in the House. And nation-to-nation negotiation is essential here between the Government of Canada and the Mi'kmaq. But also, I've said this publicly, is that industry needs a place at another table to be able to work with government and the Mi'kmaq Nation to provide ideas, suggestions, opportunities, and things of that nature. And I think that can be accomplished, and I think that's, at least as an MP, that's what I'm pushing for with Minister Jordan. I think it's essential, and everyone can agree on this. The actions of a few in West Pubnico and Digby were terrible. They were criminal. They were racist. But that was not indicative of the fishers that I know in Cape Breton-Canso. The fishers that I know in Cape Breton-Canso want to be a part of the solution. They want to work with the Mi'kmaq. They want to work with Chief and Council and Buckankeg, or Potlotek, sorry, and Buckankeg and Wakaba. So I think that we have more in common than we do that we have in differences. But right now, tensions are high. There's no doubt about that. So what I'm trying to do is, in my role, is to take down the tension a bit and allow Minister Jordan to meet with First Nations leadership and industry to come up with the best possible solution that we can for a couple of things: for the conservation of the species, for the sustainability of the species. And it's so important. And First Nations understand that, fishers understand that, and DFO understands that. So what we need to do is continue to de-escalate the hotness of this. And we need to look at those key pillars, because regardless if there is overfishing on the part of non-Indigenous fishers, Indigenous fishers, the reality is that if there's no lobster, there is no industry. So we got to look together at, certainly concepts, and we need to explore them around co-management and due diligence in terms of oversight. These are places that we need to get to, and we need to get there sooner than later. But let me be I'm unequivocal about this. There is no room for racism. There is no room for violence. We are a country of laws. We are not a country of men and women. We are a country of laws, and we need to follow them through. So I've been pretty clear, and I've been very, very active on the file, and I appreciate the leadership of both sides on this. But we need to de-escalate the rhetoric, the hotness of the dialogue, and we need to continue the dialogue right away. And Adam, it is an amazingly powerful time. We have fishers that are both the Indigenous and non-Indigenous that have worked together for years. We see tensions there, but I see because I'm listening, and every day every day, including Saturday and Sunday. We're meeting with the different groups to continue the dialogue. And certainly I'm not part of the negotiations, but what I am is someone that understands that when in Cape Breton-Canso we're divided, that leads to less results. When we're connected and we work together, good things can happen.
I want to pick up on a couple of points that you made there, and just more recently, I wanted to ask you about the discussions that you've mentioned that you will be having with leadership over the weekend. Can you give me a sense of who exactly you'll be talking to and what you'll be talking about during those meetings? Is that something you can share with us today?
Adam, I'm meeting consistently with those associations. So, for example, the Fishing Association in Richmond with Carla Sampson, Gordon McDonald, Chief Wilbert, not all together, at separate times, and other associations in Cape Breton-Canso. So, for example, what I've been doing is ensuring that we try to connect the dots as an MP. So what I do, and what I did last Thursday, was I brought the Minister of Fisheries via Zoom to meet with the Fishing Association in Richmond to provide an update on what's happening and what's going on to the best of our ability, because negotiations most times, are confidential and there's cabinet confidentiality. But also reaching out to other ministers, Adam, because certainly Bernadette is the lead on this, but also through her reaching out to other ministers, whether they be Indigenous ministers, Mark Miller or Callan Bennett, or other ministers to bring to the forefront what's happening and our own perspective on what may be the best path forward. So it is consistent dialogue with those same groups over and over again, because this is a file you can't leave, and I'm not leaving the file. I'm at the forefront of it and will continue to be. And I can't say what I say in meetings with individuals, but I will say that this resource is precious to us all, and it's not infinite. Meaning that it's a resource that if we're not careful, it can be damaged in a serious way. At the same point, we are, the Premier has said this, is that we're all treaty people. So what that means is that we need to look at that Supreme Court ruling and understand it's a Supreme Court ruling. So together, we have to unpack that. And the First Nations have, it is very, very sacrosanct, as rights would be to anyone. So going into that, we need to know that the Supreme Court ruling was not endorsed once, but twice. And again, that needs to be part of the discussion with the greater groups. While at the same time, we have to understand that the resource needs to be backed by science, conservation, and sustainability. And that's a we discussion. That's a we discussion. Because as we all know, fishing is not just a job. Fishing's a way of life. It's a part of our culture. It's part of all of our cultures: Mi'kmaq, Acadian, English, Basque. So we have a lot to stake on this together. So most of my days on this, quite frankly, are reaching out to the minister directly on this to provide the intel that I'm getting, the sides that I'm getting, the different sides, because there are, but also try to look for commonalities to build upon dialogue and give that back to her.
And one of the main reasons that we wanted to have you on Telile 24/7 to address this is because you got to participate directly in a parliamentary debate on the Indigenous fishery. And I wanted to get a sense from you in terms of the decision makers and in terms of decision makers across Canada, not just in Atlantic Canada. What's the tone of the discussion right now? How did you feel that particular debate went? And was that a conversation that can be built on?
I think from my standpoint as an MP, I got to what they call the late show, which was 12:30 in the morning, and I got to address questions from opposition on my opening remarks. Look, the MPs. I can only speak actually on behalf of myself and the MPs that I know that are working on this file pretty diligently in their own respective communities. But look, there isn't an MP, and I would say on any side of the equation that would not condemn violence and racism, whether that is a Tory in New Brunswick or Quebec or wherever the case may be. There's a genuine interest in an effort, a humongous effort on the part of MPs to meet with their constituents in the fishery sector to ensure that we get to a very, very good place quickly, whether that be a short-term gap to address a long-term need or address the long-term solution now. But number one, all MPs are in agreement. Racism and violence are a no-go zone, illegal and immoral. But I also think too, it's easy to take the actions of a few and parlay it into an industry that may be deemed as not open. And my experience has been, and my family, my mother's family are all fishers, is that they're good men and women who want the best solution possible. So during my debate, I brought up that the Marshall decision is entrenched in terms of the moderate livelihood being put out there by the Supreme Court. Needs to be unpacked, but being put out there, affirmed twice. Talked about the importance of the federal government in ensuring that significant investments in the fishery and in Indigenous communities, Marshall communities, were made, and quite a lot of money has been put into those communities, and rightly so. But I also talked about the industry, and the industry that I know. And the industry that I know are strong men and women who, in Cape Breton-Canso, who do not want to see, and just do not want to see anything like what happened in West Pamlico and Digby. So part of that was establishing the narrative of it's easy in this world to go black hat, white hat, left, right, but there's a huge middle here. And I think my point was the Indigenous communities that I serve are strong and caring, and also very focused on the moderate livelihood. And the industries that I serve and the FLAs that I work with are equal to that. And also establishing the fact that when we say de-escalation of dialogue, those are not 50 cent words. Rather, that is taking the dialogue, the hotness of the dialogue down, and continuing the dialogue. Negotiations are seldom quick. But if we bring that down, which I think we're doing to some degree, that's essential. Conservation, in my speech, Adam, it's a shared priority. I haven't met a single person in DFO who doesn't say conservation is not the top tier priority. I've not met anyone in industry that has said that. I have not met anyone in the First Nations communities that have said that. So if we want to see this resource conserved for generations to come, we know we have that in common. So the idea here is that we're all in this together, but we have to start acting like that. Because I can say it, and I can bring people together to talk about it, but we need to approach it that way. We need to get a foothold, and we need to get it quickly. And my job is to ensure that we keep that escalation. That, well, there hasn't been really any per se. There have been some instances where one might categorize that. But we need to keep it down to allow the men and women on all sides of this to get to a place that more than likely will, with like any great negotiations, requires a bit of water in the wine.
Mm.
And that's my hope.
Well, I wanted to wrap this up, Mike, by asking you a bit about the key players in keeping the dialogue going and bringing the walls down. And in particular, I wanted to ask you about your caucus colleague, the Minister of Fisheries, Bernadette Jordan. She's also a Nova Scotia MP. She's on the South Shore and a two-term MP, re-elected last year in 2019. She'd already served in the Trudeau cabinet as the Minister of Rural Development, which was the first time that such a ministry had been set up anywhere. Yeah. She has received different reviews from different people, some folks thinking that she has gone in and been able to keep that dialogue going. You mentioned a couple of instances that you've seen personally. Some criticism from others in not acting fast enough when the height of the Sebenactity fishery issues were coming to a head in September and October. What is your characterization of Minister Jordan's approach? And in particular, do you feel that she's been open to listening to your concerns and your views on all of this?
She has been exceptionally receptive to those. When I've asked for a meeting with a fishing association, because I think it's key, she's made it happen. So she's been very open, very collaborative with me. And quite frankly, we've had some interesting discussions because your viewers will know, I believe, that I do speak my mind, but I don't do it half-cocked. I get my information from the grassroots. I educate myself, and then I provide solutions, not that are my Kelloway solutions, but First Nation solutions or Indigenous or industry solutions, constituency solutions, economic solutions, social solutions, cultural solutions that are basically based inherently in a deep way from constituents. So for me, my experience has been one where she has demonstrated an immense overture to meet with me, discuss what's going on, and also for me to provide the opportunities for solutions that I hear from all sides of the equation. And many of them sometimes are the same, and some of the times they're very different. But that's my role, is to provide that leadership, to provide that transparency, to be direct, because that's why I was elected. In terms of how there are those that, as you said, say she's done a good job. There are those that would say she has the job that she's done has been not up to snuff from the opinions of those that would share those opinions. Let me say this. Someone said that crises reveals character. So this past year, and I'm not being political here because I would say the same for provincial MPs or provincial premiers, so like Doug Ford and others, that crisis reveals character. And I think that the people of Canada, the people of her riding, the people of my riding would look at that and go, crisis reveals character. Look at COVID. Look how the country and the provinces have responded. Have the provinces got it right? Not 100% of the time? No. Has the federal government got things right 100% of the time? No. But you can say that all premiers and the federal government have come to the table to address the most pressing pandemic in 100 years in a compassionate, very direct way. Now, why do I bring that up? I bring that up because here's Bernadette Jordan. She's a Minister of Fisheries. Within the first year, she's dealing with COVID, and she's dealing with an issue that's been on the radar for the past 20 years prior to her becoming MP and Minister. And I can tell you that she, prior to COVID, was meeting with the same group she's meeting with now to try to find the best possible solution and with the best possible processes in place. But she's not advertising that. She's not out there saying, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this. She's out there with the quiet diplomacy. So my thought is sometimes when you can't come out and say, these are happening, it certainly is a disadvantage for her. But I think I know the work she's doing. I know it's not easy. I know, sometimes I may have a difference in opinion with her. But I can tell you categorically, as someone who represents a riding that has so much fishery, she gets it. She's working towards trying to bring groups together to find common bonds that will lead to solutions that will ultimately need to be elements of compromise. That's not an easy job. It's not an easy job. So I would say she is working hard. She is doing her best. She's been a great colleague for me to be direct, to agree to disagree. And that's the stuff that probably many wouldn't see, but now you're hearing now. And she's under no illusions that this is a difficult position. But as the first, I believe, minister representing a Nova Scotia electoral district, female minister, we've had others that were from Cape Breton or Cape Breton-Canso, but represented a riding in Ontario, that Flora MacDonald, that were ministers. But somebody that's representing a Nova Scotia constituency and being the first minister, I think that it's a difficult position to be in. It's a difficult file to be in, but I think she's doing what she can with the tools that she has in the situation that has confronted her. And again, crisis reveals leadership. My experience has been, if I call her, she's there. If I ask her to come to a meeting, she's there. I'm working on another one with another fishing association, and I know that she'll come to that. And they're not just platitude meetings, they're discussions. So leadership's tough. Leadership is tough. I've taught leadership at the University of Calgary. My master's is in leadership. I tried to demonstrate it. It's not easy. It's not an episode of The West Wing where everything works out in the end in 33 minutes. Sometimes it requires quiet diplomacy. Sometimes it requires direct diplomacy. Sometimes it is going one way and turns out another. With the moderate livelihood discussion, and I don't know this to be a fact, I'm just making an assumption, but like most negotiations over 20 years, I'm sure there were ups and downs and assumptions made and agreements almost in place. And here we are. So what are we going to do about it? So what we're going to do about it is continue to press what we think are the right buttons of direct diplomacy, and also arguments around the fact that science is essential, conservation is essential, sustainability is essential, and we don't have 21 years. I would say we don't have 2 years. I would say we need to get this right now. And that's what we're working on.
And that seems like a good tone on which to wrap up, Mike. This is, of course, a difficult issue. Some would say it has as many moving parts as an actual live lobster. We do appreciate you giving us some time this morning and helping us to sort all this out. Thanks again for joining us on Telile 24/7 today.
Adam, thank you. And it's always great to be on Telile. It's one of my favorite channels. I watch it all the time. So thank you.
To wrap up this week's show, we wanted to give you a reminder that life goes on in Potlotek First Nation, even with the struggles that are currently taking place regarding the moderate livelihood fishery. And to give you a signal on how the community is rallying together in tough times, here's a look at the recent grand opening for the Potlotek Food Bank building, which took shape over the past few months to answer a need that has been going on in the community for years. You wouldn't necessarily associate joy with the opening of a food bank, but in Potlotek First Nation on Wednesday morning, there was a feeling of cheer, pride, and community collaboration among everybody in attendance. Leading the celebrations, Potlotek Band Councillor Anita Basque. She had seen the need for food bank services and assistance for Potlotek's less fortunate over a period of 20 years. And this month, 4 years after first bringing the issue to Band Council upon her election in 2016, Basque felt her dreams finally coming true.
When I first came in as councillor in 2016, my priority was to, having food drives, collecting food, because the social, the people that are on social, their income is very, very low. So my heart, it's just, I couldn't handle it. So I said, we're going to change a few things around here.
The road wasn't always smooth for Basque's food drives and other fundraising efforts to be able to nail down a permanent location for the food bank in Potlotek. COVID-19 and the resulting social distancing protocols stalled a Chase the Ace fundraiser that Potlotek officials had set up to keep the fundraising going. However, undaunted, they pushed forward, and by the time construction began on the new food bank facility in August, $40,000 had been raised to get the job done.
Anybody needs help? Our doors are open. I don't care who you are. I want you to know that that's the way we work here. So. Even our fishermen, our hunters, everybody.
I wanted to share the story with you. A couple of years back, I was listening to a friend of mine from Wilbert tell a story about what leadership meant to him. And he had spent years watching his father in a leadership role, and he talked about, sometimes being a leader means you're out in front of the pack, and you're leading the pack, and you're saying the words, and you're doing this kind of thing like we're doing today, right? But sometimes being a good leader means that you're also watching. You're watching for the people who maybe are not able to keep up with the pack, because you know what, sometimes life happens and it's hard to keep up sometimes. And so he thought in his view that being a true leader meant that you were always watching for the people who maybe were struggling a little bit and making sure that you were all helping them to move forward and everybody progressing and becoming successful together. And those words really stuck with me, and that's why I think today, what you've done here, this is really a true example of leadership. You're trying to make sure that no one gets left behind. So congratulations.
The presence of Warden Amanda Mumberket and Richmond County's new municipal councillor for the Potlotek area, Brent Sampson, gave Basque and her supporters the opportunity to thank the municipality for providing funding to the Potlotek Food Bank when it wasn't set up in a permanent home just a year ago.
I reached out to Richmond Municipality and received a donation of $2,000. Oh my God, I was so excited. But anyway, that was a couple of days before Christmas. And I said, oh my gosh, how are we going to do this? And I was in the kitchen with another member of the community. I said, we're going to make some meat pies. I said, oh, wow. But anyway, Jeanette Marshall and her daughters, they came into a rescue. We all went shopping. We brought all the food here and they distributed it. They went around the community. And they delivered, must be 30 or more people in the community. Each one had their cranberry sauce, and cookies for the kids, apples, oranges, and you name it. We made huge packages. Thanks for the Richmond municipality for the support.
We first started, I think it was Christmas time. We went grocery shopping and we got I believe it was 47 families that we fed that Christmas, I do believe. And from there, she wanted to do a Chase the Ace, so we started doing that, and I haven't stopped. It's super awesome. I'm proud of our community and Anita, because she fought tooth and nail to get here.
While Band Councillor Anita Basque and her food bank colleagues had special thank yous for the Economic Development Officer for Potlotek First Nation, Tahira Paul herself returned the compliment to Basque shortly before cutting the ribbon for the new food bank facility just outside the main community centre for Potlotek.
Our food bank has always existed, but now it has a real home, and it can be identified by those who need it. This project is important to our community, especially now. In our administration office, we've seen severe declines in employment opportunity and increased numbers of social assistance clients compared to previous years. For years, Councillor Anita Basque has been our voice. She has been our little voice saying, we are here, listen to us, we need this. I'd like to thank also all of our carpenters, the public works crew, the economic development crew, and those that continue to strive to support our community when our community needs it the most. Below.
This sense of collaboration and community spirit also extends to the Potlotek Food Bank's food drives. And if the new staff sergeant of the Richmond District RCMP detachment in St. Peters is any indication, it looks like police will continue to contribute to making sure that the shelves at the Potlotek Food Bank are well stocked.
This community effort here today is really impressive, and I think everybody should be proud of themselves for what's happening here. This food bank will obviously be a huge resource for the people in the community and the people who need help the most. I'm really trying to encourage community involvement with the RCMP members that I command here in Richmond County. I think we've got some great people here that have been involved in the community. I'm going to help with that. You'll see us out and about helping Anita and the team here with the food bank and all of that stuff, with food drives. We'll try to have a marketplace car for you for food drives every couple of weeks and stuff like that, and we'll do our best to help out.
Also helping out local farmers and produce growers. And if Potlotek Chief Wilbert Marshall has his way, there'll soon be a new facility alongside the Potlotek Food Bank to be able to provide more fresh fruits and vegetables to those in need.
And this food bank is going to go to it because we have a food greenhouse coming up also. It's going to be built by next year. It's going to all intertwine with this also.
There's still a lot to be done at the Potlotek Food Bank, including the setting of formal hours. For now, it's a time of celebration as the community thanks those who helped them to be able to put a permanent structure in place and looks to build on the success that it's had feeding the less fortunate in Potlotek First Nation in temporary locations for the food bank that will soon become a permanent home. In Potlotek First Nation for Telile 24/7, I'm Adam Cook.
And that wraps up this week's special edition of Telile 24/7. We certainly don't anticipate that what you've seen over the past hour answers every single question, but we hope you have come away with a better understanding of the issues currently surrounding the moderate livelihood fishery, not just in Potlotek First Nation, but all the way around Nova Scotia and beyond. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns about anything you've heard over the past little while, or you'd just like to suggest some ideas for future stories, you can always contact me directly. My phone number is 902-625-8863, and you can reach me by email. That address is adamjrcook, cook with an E, @gmail.com. You can contact Telile Community Television directly as well. The station phone number is 902-226-1928. And you can also reach Telile by email. The address is telile@telile.tv. Don't forget that you can follow Telile on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Our YouTube channel is filled with every single episode of Telile 24/7, including this one, and you are also able to access every single interview and story we've done on Telile 24/7, including the individual pieces from this special episode. I'm Adam Cook. Thank you very much for tuning in. We look forward to seeing you very soon with the next edition of Telile 24/7. We'll talk to you then.